Hi everyone, it's Gwen from Hummingbird Tarot, and today I want to talk to you a little bit more about what it means when you see the words RWS or hear Rider-Waite-Smith. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell so you're notified each week when I upload a new video. So RWS stands for Rider-Waite-Smith. What does that mean? Arthur Waite was a member of the Golden Dawn, which was a secret society that practiced the occult. And there was also another member of the Golden Dawn called Pamela Smith. So Arthur Waite reached out to Pamela Smith for her to create a version of each of the 78 cards in what we now call a standard tarot deck. And she painted the images. And Arthur Waite is the one who asked her to draw them and gave her the specifics of what he would like to see in the drawings. And then these cards were printed, and this is in the early 1900s, and the original printer's name was Rider. When someone's talking about Rider-Waite-Smith, they're talking about the original drawings that Pamela Coleman Smith drew. And those are the images that are used in the deck. There's several different versions of it. I'm going to walk through what some of those versions look like. So the ones that I have to touch on today are the Universal Waite, the Smith-Waite Tarot deck. Here's another Smith-Waite Tarot deck. This one's borderless, and this is the one with borders. And the Radiant Rider-Waite. And basically all of these are the exact same images, and they're just drawn or colored a little differently. Let me show you some examples. So, for example, this is the Radiant Rider-Waite deck. And you can see each of the colors and how it's drawn there. And this card, is from the Universal Waite, and they look very similar at a glance, but if you look at the detail, they're different. And then if I pull in the Smith-Waite Tarot deck, there's that. And this looks a little more tea-stained. And this is the borderless edition of it. You'll see it's just zoomed in a little bit more on the border. And there are people who hate borders and like borderless decks. And there's people that love borders. So for me, it depends on the deck that I'm using. Some of the cards I prefer the borders, and some of them I don't. And then this is what this card here looks like with the border around it. So these cards look very similar, but the yellows all look very similar in these decks. If you look at some of the other colors, you'll see they're very different from each other. This is the Radiant Rider-Waite. This one is the Universal Waite. This one is the Smith-Waite Tarot deck. So look at the difference in colors of the blues. My favorite of them is this one here, the Radiant Rider-Waite. But some people prefer the softer muted colors. This one is actually easier on the eyes. And to be honest with you, I usually reach for the Radiant Rider-Waite, but it depends on my mood. Sometimes I like one of the other two decks, but you're just gonna have to decide on your own. This is what the back of the Smith-Waite deck looks like. This is the back of the Universal Waite, and this is the back of the Rider-Waite deck. You'll also see lots of other decks that are called, somebody might call them a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, which is a different version, an updated version of the same drawings, but somebody else drew them to look similar to those, or what's called Rider-Waite-Smith based. And I'll take you through a couple decks that have some cards like that so we can talk about that a little bit more. Okay, so I've got a couple decks here. One I would call a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, and that is the deck called Tarot Made Easy by Barbara Moore. This is what the back of her cards look like. And I'm just going to show you just a couple cards out of this deck. So I'm looking at the Universal Waite deck here. Here is the traditional 10 of Wands in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And here is the drawing out of Barbara Moore's Tarot Made Easy deck. So you can see why people call this deck a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. It's very close to the original drawing of that. And some of the cards in the Everyday Witch deck are very similar as well. So that same card that I showed you, the 10 of Wands, this is that same card in the Everyday Witch deck. And you'll remember this is the one from Barbara Moore's. And here's the original one. The reason I would call the Everyday Witch Rider-Waite-Smith based is because a lot of the other images in the deck are similar but different. For example, in the Everyday Witch deck, this is what the 10 of Cups looks like. And this is the 10 of Cups in the original Rider-Waite-Smith version. And it's definitely based. It's got a lot of the same. There's 10 cups in there. There's a family together, but they're in a much different pose than the original one. And a lot of the images in the Everyday Witch deck are like this. They're definitely based. You can see the imagery from Rider-Waite-Smith, but the drawings aren't quite so similar as you might find in a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. I wanted to show you too the 10 of Cups in Barbara Moore's deck. So you'll see that one's very similar to the original one, and this one's different, but still based definitely on the original. You can see the influence of it. So let's take a look at some other cards too. So the 7 of Cups in the original Rider-Waite-Smith version. This next one that I'm showing is the Barbara Moore Tarot Made Easy version, and then here is the version out of the Everyday Witch deck. So I highly recommend to beginners that they use the Rider-Waite-Smith deck or they get to know it, because it will help them with so many other tarot decks that they may like. Now, if you hate the images in it and you don't feel any attachment at all, I definitely encourage you to listen to your gut, and you want to go with the deck that you love, that speaks to you. But you will find that the majority of tarot decks are based on this original Rider-Waite-Smith. And if you learn that tarot system, then that will make it a lot easier for you to read these other decks that you love. I hope this information was helpful to you. Do you have a burning question about tarot? Leave a question in the comments and I'll use that information to make a future recording. Thanks for stopping by.